Imagine, imagine Atlanta, 1977, and finding a body hidden under a coat in the backseat of a car. That's how this whole nightmare began with the Lover's Lane killer.
It's a case that really captures your attention. Both fascinating and deeply unsettling. It shows the dark side of human nature and the randomness of evil, how it can strike anyone, anywhere.
On January 16th, 1977, Labrian Lovett and Veronica Hill, they were just a young couple looking for a quiet moment together in Adams Park. And tragically, their search for peace ended in a really brutal attack, leaving Labrian dead and Veronica's body was actually hidden in their car.
That detail about Veronica's body, hiding the body, that's very significant. It suggests a level of premeditation, an attempt to control the crime scene, and maybe even instill a deeper sense of fear. This wasn't just about taking lives, right? It was about creating a terrifying narrative.
It's disturbing, for sure. And the fear that must have just washed over the city after that discovery, it's unimaginable. A killer on the loose, targeting couples in secluded spots. You'd feel like nowhere was safe.
Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Crime series. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.
And what makes this case even more chilling is the killer's methodology. Exactly 27 days later, another couple attacked. Same time of night. Same .38 caliber gun. It's a pattern, points to a disturbing level of planning and control.
Thankfully, that couple managed to escape, but the psychological trauma I can only imagine to be that close to death sends chills down my spine.
Absolutely. And the fact that the killer used the same weapon in both attacks, it suggests a signature behavior.
Right.
We use this term in criminal profiling. It's about acts that go beyond what's necessary to commit the crime. They're often symbolic and can provide valuable insights into the killer's psyche. What makes them tick?
So in this case, using the same gun could indicate a need for familiarity or maybe even a desire to leave a calling card. Exactly. It's as if the killer wanted to connect the attacks, to create a sense of dread and anticipation of what might come next.
And tragically, 28 days later, the killer returned to the scene of his first crime, Adams Park.
This third attack shows an escalation, both in the violence and the confidence of the killer. He wasn't content with threats. He was intent on taking lives, seemingly without remorse.
This time it was Diane Collins and her fiancé. They were enjoying a quiet evening, and then suddenly, gunfire. Diane was tragically killed instantly, but her fiancé, even though he was shot in the head, miraculously survived. He managed to drive himself to safety.
That is incredible, a real testament to the human will to survive. But it also highlights the cold-blooded nature of the killer, aiming to inflict maximum damage, leaving behind a trail of devastation.
And yet, despite this escalation, the attacks suddenly stopped. No more shootings, no more victims, just silence. It's as if the killer vanished into thin air. What happened? Why did he stop?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's haunted investigators for decades. Did something in the killer's life force him to stop? Did he move? Get arrested for a different crime? Or maybe even die? We just don't know.
It's as if this terrifying chapter in Atlanta's history just ended abruptly, leaving behind more questions than answers.
Yeah, it really is the sudden disappearance of this killer. As perplexing as the attacks themselves, it's almost as if he was like a phantom, just appearing and disappearing at will, leaving behind fear and so many unanswered questions.
The pressure on the police must have been intense. A city on edge, demanding answers. And with so little to work with, it sounds like the killer was incredibly meticulous, barely leaving any evidence behind.
Absolutely. The lack of physical evidence was a major roadblock. Every lead, every whisper, every little rumor, they chased them all down, but nothing concrete ever came up.
Were there any suspects at all, or persons of interest that stood out?
There were a few, but nothing that ever panned out to an arrest. Witness descriptions were all over the place, further complicating the investigation. Some said the assailant was tall and slender, others said he was short and stocky. It was almost like they were describing different people.
Like trying to catch a shadow. The more you try to grab it, the more it slips away.
Exactly. And, the lack of a clear motive only adds to the mystery. Was it about power? Control? Was it something more personal, some twisted vendetta we may never understand? Without that missing piece, it's hard to narrow down the possibilities.
So let's talk about some of the big questions surrounding the case. First off, did the killer ever strike again? Any other attacks we could link to him?
Officially, no. After that third attack at Adams Park, the trail just goes cold. No other confirmed crimes fit the pattern, no similar killings with the same MO. At least, not that we know of.
But couldn't that sudden stop point to something major happening in the killer's life? Maybe a move, an illness, or even an arrest for an unrelated crime?
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe something happened, something that just interrupted his pattern, forced him to change his ways or just disappear. But we don't have any evidence. It's all just speculation at this point.
It's a chilling thought, to be honest. The possibility that he just blended back into society, living with this dark secret.
It is, and it raises a question. What if he never actually stopped? What if he just changed his MO? Adapted to avoid getting caught? We might never know for sure.
That's unsettling. What about the impact on the city, Atlanta? How did people cope with that fear and uncertainty back then?
The impact was huge. It lasted a long time. People were scared to go out at night, especially couples. Parks, secluded areas, those places used to be seen as romantic and peaceful, but they became sources of anxiety, places people dreaded.
Did the city put any new safety measures in place?
They did. Increased police presence in public areas.
Hmm.
The city also put money into better street lighting and surveillance. But the biggest change was probably in how people viewed their own safety.
In what way?
People became more vigilant, more aware of their surroundings, less trusting of strangers, and more cautious about where they went, who they were with. It was a collective trauma that really changed the city.
It's a sad reminder that even in a lively city like Atlanta, darkness can still be hiding.
Indeed. And it highlights how important community is. Looking out for each other, being aware of the dangers, even in familiar places.
Yeah, it really is. You think about how those attacks just changed everything, not just for the victims and their families, but for everyone, for the whole community.
No doubt. The ripple effect of violence is huge. It goes way beyond the immediate victims. It creates this atmosphere of fear, of distrust. That can stick around for a long time.
We've talked about what the killer did, the police investigation, the impact on the city. But what about the victims themselves, their stories? What can you tell us about the lives that were lost, the lives that were forever changed?
It's so important to remember that these weren't just, statistics or case files. These were real people with hopes and dreams, and their stories need to be told.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes we get lost in the details of the crime, and it's important to remember the human side of it all, the people behind it, to acknowledge the loss their families went through.
Exactly. Labrie and Lovett, he was so young, full of potential. Veronica Hill, people said she had this infectious laugh. She was known for her kindness. These were good people, and their lives were cut way too short.
And Diane Collins, her fiancé. We know he survived, but wow, I can't even imagine the scars, physical and emotional, that he lives with.
Yeah, he was left with a permanent reminder of that night, a burden that no one should ever have to carry.
It really drives home the point that the true cost of crime, it goes way beyond just numbers and headlines. It's about shattered lives, broken hearts.
Exactly, and it's why we're still talking about these cases. They force us to face that darkness and to ask ourselves, why? Why does this kind of evil happen?
So where do we go from here? We might never know who the Atlanta Lovers Lane killer was or why he did what he did, but what can we learn? What lessons can we take away to try to prevent something like this from happening again?
I think vigilance is key. We can't get complacent. Be aware, trust your gut feeling, and if something seems off, report it.
What about the community aspect? We talked about how these attacks shattered that sense of security in Atlanta. Could a strong community have made a difference?
I think so, yeah. Strong communities are really important. When neighbors look out for each other, report anything suspicious, it makes a difference. It creates a safer place.
And it's a reminder that it's on us to support victims of violence and their families. These events leave so much pain and trauma behind, and we need to offer compassion, support, resources to those who are hurting.
I couldn't agree more. It's about healing together as a community and working to create a world where things like this are less likely to happen.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Atlanta Lovers Lane murders. A case that keeps us thinking, keeps us scared, and reminds us that even when things seem to be going well, darkness can be closer than we think.
And, like always, we encourage you to keep digging, to keep asking those tough questions, and to never forget the importance of empathy and understanding, even when faced with the most difficult situations.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the dark side of human nature. Make sure to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle and check out our YouTube channel for more twisted crime stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember the truth is out there.